Zopa. Thank you for being here today at the Alternative Investment Summit. I just wondered if, first of all, you could explain a little bit about your background and what Zopa do, because not every advisor is going to be completely aware about what's happening in the crowdfunding space.
Sure. Well, Zopa is actually the first peer-to-peer lending business in the world. So I think we sort of created a term, peer-to-peer lending, before crowdfunding became a trendy term, and we've been in business since 2005. We've now lent just over £400 million and gained over 1% market share in the UK personal unsecured lending market. So the business is really scaling and we're having a lot of fun.
Excellent. And I think a lot of advisors, they're going to be sort of stuck in their status quo, and they're going to have some apprehension about advising on something like crowdfunding and helping their clients get into something like Zopa. So what would you say to advisors who are in that mindset? How can they sort of get over their hesitancy?
Well, the first thing I'd recommend is they give it a go themselves. So most advisors have got a few spare quid. So give it a go, because the experience will be the same regardless of the level of money that they actually invest in the platform. And have a good look at the way we describe ourselves on the website, the way we manage risk, for example, which is obviously, and the various different risks associated with the business, which is, I would guess, their principal concern. And have a look at the track record of the business. And then, after all, we'd love to talk to them. So if anyone wants to talk to us about any concerns they have, or what we think the strengths of the platform are that they can recommend to their customers, and we'd be delighted to help.
And I think another common mistake advisors might make will be just assuming that all crowdfunding or peer-to-peer lending, or whatever you call it, they're just going to assume that it's all the same. And that's not true, is it? So can you just expand a little bit on the different crowdfunding models we see, and how that impacts on the different levels of risk you're exposed to?
Sure. So there are a number of different asset classes developing. And I think sort of at one level is peer-to-peer lending, which, when done sensibly and correctly and responsibly, leads to extremely predictable returns that aren't perhaps as exciting as some alternative returns, but are extremely predictable, and therefore makes sense for a client who's actually quite risk averse and quite conservative in an investment outlook. And then the risk profile will vary from that all the way up to equity, and as far as investing in early stage startups, which is obviously an incredibly different proposition. Suits some people, not everybody. And then along the way there are various hybrid models that perhaps combine a bit of both. So I think there's a very rich and varied risk spectrum, and the rewards are sensibly correlated with that level of risk. And I think of all the asset classes involved, I think peer-to-peer lending is much the most stable, and therefore to many people perhaps the most sensible.
Yeah, so for advisors, they shouldn't make the mistake of assuming everything's the same, and then their sweet spot, really is going to be peer-to-peer lending. That's going to be.
I think that depends on their client's investment profile. So that's what advisors are good at, is trying to establish what level of risk their clients are looking to take. My guess is that most advised clients are not looking to take significant levels of risk.
I think you'd probably be right. And finally, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about CP 1313, which was the FCA's proposed new regulations for the crowdfunding industry. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think they've got it right? Do you think it could be improved, or is it going to be a good thing for the industry?
Well, apart from calling it crowdfunding, which we're not particularly keen on, no, I think they've done a really good job, actually. I mean, as ever, it's a consultation period, and there'll be some detail that we'll want to talk to them about. But we've been in conversation with them for a number of months now, and we're really pleased that they've taken on board some, not everything we've told them, obviously. They have to do their own job, but they've taken on a lot of what we've suggested on board. And we think regulation in general is a very good thing, as long as it's done proportionately and sensibly. And touch wood, it looks like it is.
Touch wood. Well, yeah, I guess it's a bit of a watershed moment for the crowdfunding industry getting regulated. So I guess my final question is, how are we going to know if the regulation was appropriate? Because really, crowdfunding and peer-to-peer lending should be challenging traditional sources of funding and financing. So how is the FCA going to know that they've given it enough room to challenge the status quo, but been able to protect consumers at the same time?
Well, if you like, the proof will be in the pudding in the end, and how successful the businesses are. So I think the FCA has taken on board some guidance from government that, broadly speaking, this is a sector that the government wants to see encouraged, not sponsored or subsidised subsidised in any way, but encouraged. And the business is currently growing between 150 and 200% a year on year. So really exciting levels of growth. I would hope that that level of growth would continue, if not even accelerate, because regulation will help us in terms of trust at a general consumer level. So I suppose a test of whether or not the regulations are too onerous is whether they start to impinge upon that level of really dramatic growth.
Excellent. Well, Giles, thank you very much for your time and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Pleasure.